Next to her is Kwame Acheampong from More for Africa. And finally, Eleni Gabre-Madhin, as you heard before, from Blue Moon. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All our mics are working?
I hope so.
I
Yes.
think so. Let's check. Well, not yet. Are you switched on?
Hello?
Let's give you that in case.
Hello.
Okay.
It's working.
I think you're working now.
I guess mine.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I
You're
get to hold the mic.
No, you're okay.
I'm okay.
Yes, you're okay. Thanks, everybody. So thank you so much for coming for TechCrunch Startup Battlefield Africa. Our kind of topic this morning really is about, and guys, can I get my timer up here? That would be fantastic. It's about entrepreneurs coming into Africa, being from Africa, going away, coming back again, but also just the general sort of startup ecosystem. If I can turn to you first, Kwame, More for Africa. You obviously from the region, but also you've been away, you've come back as well. What are some of the contrasts that you see that were immediately obvious to you when you started becoming an entrepreneur again over here?
Well, over here?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your story, first of all. I think it'd be great to hear that.
My story is quite diverse. Actually, I started my career as a sound engineer, working with artists around the world, and then I decided to go into investment banking. And then the dot-com bubble came, and I was quite fortunate to be one of the founding employees of a company called DoubleClick, and we actually shaped the online advertising and digital monetization solutions or industry. And then we got swallowed or bought by Google, had to do my term there, and then I decided to go myself out into the world and create my own startups or my own company. So my biggest company I did was in Ghana, a company called ProfPay, which is a fintech and banking system, which I successfully exited in Ghana, and then I decided to come to Nigeria and try my luck here as well.
And so, what was the first thing that hit you when you re-entered the system?
It's a different kind of organization.
Right.
Yes, you learn something on that side, and you think you can just plug it on here. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work to
It
just
doesn't work. You can't just take and bring it here. You have to what you've learned there, and understand the system here, and then adapt to that system.
Eleni, what is also what you've found?
Yeah, so what's working? Yes.
Oh yeah, you are now.
Right, so my story is that I spent most of my life outside of Ethiopia. I'm Ethiopian by birth and origin, but lived about 30 years outside of Ethiopia and then returned. So I left when I was very young. And when I got back, I trained as an economist. I have a PhD in economics, and I came back to really see what I could do in terms of doing something impactful. One thing led to another, and I ended up founding the Ethiopia Commodity Exchange, ECX, which started operations in 2008 and was trading $1.2 billion of commodity in about 3 years, and is now about $2 billion of commodity trading. It went wildly successful, and it was a great experience. So I decided, following that my next gig would be besides trying to build commodity exchanges around Africa, which was a company that I launched, I've now done a second company, which is called Blue Moon, which is Ethiopia's first youth agribusiness, agri-tech incubator and seed investment platform. And so what we're basically trying to do is find those exceptional ideas and turn them into high growth companies, some of which we've been looking at here. And I think, just to answer and kind of build on what Kwame just said about coming back, because I left when I was so young that I really came as an outsider. But what I think is amazing, and I think the word maybe is repat, from the list that you had on your title of this session.
I'm not sure how many people use that phrase.
Yeah, no, I think of myself as a diaspora, which is maybe another way to say repat.
Exactly,
I'm not sure, but that experience of being of the place, but not quite understanding how it works, but at the same time having a certain connection and empathy that is different than coming as as an expat,
Yeah.
where you don't have that root, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very potent thing. It's very powerful. And I think we actually underestimate the power of being an outsider insider. And that's been my experience. I think if somebody else had come with the Stanford PhD and proposed that we build a commodity exchange and had a chance to actually pitch that to the prime minister of the country, I think they would have been met with a lot more resistance than someone who came from the place. And I think that's something that works both ways. So one is, the many times where I was so frustrated that things didn't work as I thought they should because I came from a different culture of organizational, performance. But at the same time, I think I was also able to bring people along with me into the dream because they trusted me, and that trust is really because of where my roots were. Right. So I think working with both of those is very important.
I see. Lexi, you're obviously investing in Africa. Tell us your story, and also tell us how you're breaking into the ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So I actually grew up in a very different environment. I grew up in a small farm town in northeastern Oregon, population 135, and now I live in Lagos, Nigeria, over 21 million people. And to be clear, this is my home. So
basically similar then.
Yeah, similar, same sort of thing. Still we don't have great electricity or running water in either places, but besides that, not a lot of similarities. But to be clear, this is my home, so I don't know if I necessarily consider myself an expat, or the term diaspora I think is more relevant because
You've really made it your home.
I've made it my home.
Yeah.
I've been here now 6 years, and I'm committed for a lot longer.
Amazing.
And yes, we're investing in local founders that are building businesses across the continent, but especially in Nigeria.
Let's talk about the challenges and opportunities. What are some of the challenges and opportunities, I guess? Kwame.
I think the opportunities for me, other than obviously what I'm doing right now, but I think the vast majority, I think, is the long tail. A lot of people concentrate on the middle class and high class, but I think the opportunity especially is where is the long tail, the unbanked, the disenfranchised. Giving them solutions that actually make their lives much better. So in things like microfinance or access to banking in the rural areas.
Do you think there's too much emphasis in the conversation about startups aiming at the booming middle class, or do you think that we should shift the focus back to the emerging classes?
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
To be clear, the middle class are people that make $4 a day. So that's still a large amount of spending power when you're targeting that consumer base.
It's good context, absolute context, yes.
Yes, but I think, I think the app space or the solution space should be really concentrated on that to try and bring them up into the economic space as well, because actually they have been disconnected, and there's a big gap where you can actually bring them into the fold.
I see. One of your points about that I remember discussing is that fintech is quite a big sector. Would you agree?
Yes, it is.
Still?
In terms of especially marrying it with telecoms and mobile technology.
Is that also your experience, Eleni?
I'm on record for saying that ag tech is the new fintech.
Ag
so
tech?
I'm gonna stick to that. Ag tech is the new fintech.
Why is that?
And I feel, and as we just saw in the last session, 3 of the 5 companies that just went through the last session were ag companies, and I think that's really kind of something that I think we are seeing a virtual explosion, not just in Africa, but in the U.S., in Western Europe, and elsewhere in startup ecosystems, that a lot of attention is going into how to solve the 9.5 billion people problem. How are we going to feed? How are we going to increase food by 69% to feed the 9.5 billion people by 2050? Smart, cities, urbanization. How can we grow food vertically without soil, with all sorts of optimized systems, etc. And so agriculture being the least digitized sector that we know, I think the scope for impact and for having huge disruptive innovations is massive. So I think that where I see the opportunities in Africa is for technology to be applied and to really leapfrog, because we don't have massive legacy systems. So we really have an edge when it comes to, and yet our economies are largely agricultural. So we have the, the massive opportunity ahead of us.
Agtech is the new fintech. Lexi, you agree?
So we have invested a lot in fintech over the past couple of years. I would say the space that we're most interested in now is enterprise solutions. So we're very interested in platforms that are building scalable solutions for inventory and supply chain management, enterprise software as a service, or that allows traditional manufacturing or whatever sectors to unlock a larger consumer base and provide more services to their customer base. We think it's still quite difficult to target the end consumer in this market. There's still low digital literacy. It's still quite fragmented. There's still low trust. But if you're leveraging off of helping these other larger major enterprise players unlock their consumer base, that's probably where the best opportunity is.
Kwame, would you disagree then, given that your statement earlier?
I don't disagree with both of them, but again, if you look at agri-tech or enterprise tech, in the middle, there has to be that financial transaction. How do you make that financial transaction?
Right.
That's why I still stick on that. There's a financial element to it, and there needs to be where the end goal is trying to make some money from that, or have a financial transaction.
More for Africa has become very well known because it's solving that sort of last mile problem.
Yes.
Of allowing people to buy goods and services.
Yes.
I love the way you were telling me earlier about how you managed to scrape Amazon and I'm sure Jeff Bezos knows all about this.
Oh yeah, we're good buddies.
Absolutely, good. How's that? Have you got your ticket on the space cruiser yet? What are some of the other things going on? Agtech, fintech. Obviously, you're doing e-commerce.
Yes.
And I think also the other thing is very interestingly this potential to leapfrog as well away from legacy systems. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean,
legacy infrastructure.
Yeah. I mean, also, but in terms of what's going on, in terms of more for Africa, what we're doing, we're importing a lot of goods. But with our infrastructure, we've realized that now what we can give back is actually exporting goods. So we're actually creating a platform allowing local SMEs to actually reach outside, like in the US or UK, and we're already getting a lot of tractions from that. People already buying from us in terms of local produce going out. And then we're going to put that into arts and craft and also agriculture.
Lexi.
So I think that the two biggest opportunities for companies across the board are to focus on digital identity of the African consumer and data insights collection and analytics. Everybody complains that we haven't seen exits on the continent. I think our exits are going to come from companies that have collected that data, are using it in a valuable way, because there really is no data. Data is very siloed on the continent. It's owned by the banks and telcos, not even really the government. So companies that are building platforms that really enable that harvesting of information, I think are going to be very valuable.
So data is the new oil, as they say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Eleni, what do you say?
Totally agree with both points. And I think the other one that I would mention is clean tech, and in general, waste, and all the solutions that we're seeing emerging, coming out with waste management solutions.
Kwame, I remember we had a quick chat before the panel, and you were saying that Facebook isn't that important here. And it's interesting how there's certainly in London and San Francisco, Facebook is constant topic of conversation because of how much privacy it's invading and things like that. But here, people are using it more like a marketplace, right?
Yeah, it's like I said, when you come here, what you think happens there, over here it's different. So Facebook, WhatsApp is totally used different here. I mean, obviously used it, but it's used in business as call center, as support tools. And also, Facebook is used a lot for like local merchants or local business people who go like to Europe and buy suitcases of clothes and actually shift suitcase bucket loads on Facebook. So it's actually used quite differently here.
Yeah, it's interesting that people consume very little data on their phones. They're turning their data on to go onto Facebook and WhatsApp, and then they switch it right back off again.
Is that in order to retain it?
Yeah, to make the Also, a lot of the telco companies are also doing they allow you to go onto Facebook without using a lot of your data as well, but otherwise they're turning it on and off, which is quite interesting. So definitely the most valuable platform for consuming content and doing business.
Is there opportunities for new players then in the telco market, or does it tend to be quite locked up?
New opportunities in the telco market in terms of value-added services, marketing on the telcos. So I generally tend to think that the way to access the consumer base is to go to platforms that consumers are already using. And for me, I think that's Facebook, and they're also using WhatsApp, but certainly going to Facebook.
Yeah. Eleni, what do you think?
No, I think that Facebook is here for for the conceivable future. I mean, I think that if anything, marketing off of Facebook is actually growing. So that's something that we're seeing, and then also WhatsApp is, I think, also very, very popular right now. That one I'm not so sure what the long-term prospect is.
So what sort of things is people are obviously interested in the investment space generally? What sort of things are you looking for in teams? The old-fashioned talent first, ideas second. Is it execution, traction early, or early execution, early traction? Is the market just so wide open and for opportunities that you're just hungry to see anything?
No, not at all. I mean, I think for us, in terms of priority, talent is definitely number one. This is a market that doesn't have a lot of success stories that you can leverage off of to begin with. You probably need to pivot your business plan several times. You need to have the relationships really unlock the opportunity. And you need to have the grit to stick with it, and also the ability to really scale up and grow, and that expertise as well.
Right. What about you, you two, Kwame? What sort of things do you look? When you're hiring people, I mean, is there enough talent out there to feed the market?
The talent is a good question. I believe there is talent out there, or there is skill out there. Well, talent in there, but that you can train. But just to get talent right into the door, to start from zero, is very hard.
What are some of the problems in that issue, with that issue?
I think
The university is not producing enough people.
I don't know. I think the culture here is people are more used to be told what to do than actually have the confidence to actually lead. Mm-hmm. So and that's the problem. So when they come in, you can see the talented person, but it's like they may be insecure.
They've sort of come from a command and control culture.
Exactly.
And so startups especially require much more creativity.
Exactly. So
an initiative.
You have to try and foster that out of them. I'm not saying it's not there, but I've found that when you do spend time with them, they grasp it very quickly, mm-hmm. and you can get them up to scratch. But just getting straight out of the market is quite hard to get that talent right out of the market.
Is that also your experience, Eleni?
We are on an experiment or journey, so to speak, with Blue Moon to incubate and seed invest 300 companies in 5 years. So we've already now in 18 months, we're on about 50 companies in our fourth batch. And so I've gone through quite a lot of looking at teams and talent and personalities and of course the ideas. And I think if I were to try to, say where do we fall in terms of what we're latch on to first, I think the first thing is to make sure that we have a product market fit. And mm-hmm. that really where what's the market for this? Because so many people are coming with Uber type of plays. Everybody wants to be the next Uber. Everybody wants to, do food delivery or whatever. So really, for me, what's interesting is to make sure that we've got a bottom of pyramid, highly scalable model to begin with, and then coming to the team. And I want to separate talent from team, because talent we can grow. And we do grow, and we work extensively. I mean, our incubator program is 6 months, so we spend a lot of time, full-time, intensively coaching on the skills and pivoting and so on. But what is hard to change and to mold or even influence is team and the humility and the passion and the grit and the determination, which is different from skills. So that we spend a lot of time screening for and looking at and getting to know who we're talking to before we make a decision incubate. So I think that's a really important distinction.
When you see the market, I mean, how do you see investors deploying their capital at the moment? You were talking earlier a lot about enterprise, so that seems to be really quite a huge play right now.
Yeah, I think it's just starting to pick up some traction. I would say local investors are deploying their capital still very limited. There's still very few institutional local investors in the market. And then I would say international investors that are participating pretty actively have been investing a lot in fintech and other, I would say, largely impact-driven models. That's generally what I've seen.
Is that a positive thing, you think, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any capital coming into the market is a positive thing. As long as you're building, as long as it's funding responsible growth. I'm obviously quite nervous about some capital coming in too fast, companies absorbing that capital the best they can, but growing too rapidly and maybe not building a sustainable business out of it.
Right, so sustainable business is still pretty key. What are some of the things that you're seeing about how investors are deploying, Kwame?
I mirror what Lexi says.
Right.
Hello? Yeah, I mirror what Lexi says. I think it's sad. Well, it's a shame that local investors, like I said, institutional investors, are not that many. Most of the investment that comes into the space is from foreign investors, which I think locally we should have some more investors coming from local money.
Yeah, I mean, I think local investors can bring a lot of value in helping local companies grow. I mean, we unlock a lot of doors just based on our network, by understanding hopefully the local problems as well, and by helping them source a lot of talent. International investors can bring something to the table as well. They have a lot more global expertise. They've built lots of scalable companies with business processes in place. So I don't think it's an either or. I think both are valuable.
Well, I come from a very different, and I would say quite an earlier stage startup ecosystem than Nigeria or Ghana. So the first thing I think to point out in Ethiopia is that we have very little institutional capital to begin with. There are only 7 PE funds, or actually less, 5 PE funds, and the PE industry itself is only about 7 years old, and we've just had one exit in the last 7 years. So, and then coming to VCs, one trying to kind of get established, but really virtually nothing. So where we are with Blue Moon is that we are trying to raise a seed fund to be the first capital. And if you think of that, startup financing cycle, the family, friends, and fools, and then you get to institutional investors, but in between you need angels and sort of seed capital. And so we're trying to fill that gap. And in Ethiopia, we have another constraint, which is that there's a policy investment policy constraint that foreign investment must be higher than $200,000. So that wipes out Village Capital and other sort of early stage investors at that 25 to 50,000 ticket range. So that's kind of where we're playing, and what we're doing now is developing a local angel network.
Right.
We call them Lions, and we have something like Shark Tank called Lions Den. So all of this is really building this angel investing culture that I think in Lagos, for example, is quite well developed.
I think, honestly, I would love to talk to you guys all day because I just think this area is so fascinating. But just very quickly, what would be the one piece of advice that you would each give to either an expat coming in or someone from the diaspora coming in and getting involved in the local ecosystems, whether it be Lagos, whether it be Ethiopia? What's one piece of advice you would give them?
Just come. Just come.
Just come. Come on over.
Just come. Do it.
Come on.
Come prepared and be ready for the long haul.
Get ready.
Yeah, so similar. I would say don't trust all the McKinsey reports that tell you this opportunity is massive. It is, but it takes a lot to unlock it.
Come for the long haul and bring some true grit with you.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming to TechCrunch Startup Battlefield Africa.
Fun. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Battlefield.